So, a very good morning to those in Europe and a very good afternoon to those who have joined us today and are watching from India. Welcome from a very sunny late winter, early spring in Berlin. I think on this end of the equation, we're quite pleased to have the sun out and a little bit less cold weather. I'm thrilled to be joined for the first of the GIIC executive briefings with three people very close to GIIC. It's my pleasure to introduce Caroline King, Dr. Jörn Plettich, and Lavnish Arora. Perhaps best, first of all, I'll give a brief introduction to the GIIC, the German-Indian Innovation Corridor. I'll go into a bit more detail on that shortly. But the GIIC is an innovation corridor set up between Germany and India, where we're focusing on a bunch of different industries and verticals and creating an innovation highway, if you will, between the two. So I'd hand over now quickly to Caroline, Jörn, and to Lavnish to introduce yourselves in 2 to 3 sentences, and then we'll go into the rest of the program. And I'll hand over, first of all, to Caroline.
Thanks very much, Luke, and happy to be here. I hope you can all hear me well. My name's Caroline King. I have come from a long corporate career, primarily at SAP, but also some other stations along the way in public affairs, and worked primarily on international programs. So both the business development side, opening new markets for the company, but also focused very much on public policy issues, and certainly accompanied the Indian trade and business development relations for a long time. It's a pleasure for me to join today after following the signing of the agreement. I think it's marking a big milestone, and I'm very happy to talk about with this illustrious panel online today. Maybe I'll just stop there for the moment and have a chance to give the other panelists an introduction as well.
That's great. Thank you, Caroline. Lavnish, over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. Great to be on the panel with you. Hi, everyone. I'm Lavnish. So I've had a long corporate career myself, worked in different parts of the world. Currently work in India with BCG as a partner. Prior to this, I was for a long time in Berlin, in Germany, worked across different parts of Europe, LATAM, APAC, and was involved in business development, running businesses globally, was also involved in cross-border e-commerce. So very excited to sort of build on top of this GIIC initiative, and with this big aggressive push coming on the India-EU FTA, looking forward to this chat.
Great. Thanks, Lavnish. Over to you, Jörn. Oh, we don't seem to be able to hear you. Oh, these pesky AirPods. I think we all have that issue every now and again.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Okay, there was a little misconception. Thanks to all of you for having us. Thank you, Luke and GIIC, for this webinar. My name is Jörn Plettich. I'm Senior Counsel and Patent Attorney with ETLIP. I'm very active in the fields of life sciences and pharmacy, and there also worked, of course, a lot with Indian colleagues. And today we specifically want to shed some light into the IP perspective on the FTA.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jörn. 2 sentences to me as well. I'll be moderating for the day. I have been a partner of the GIIC now for just over a year. My background is primarily in consulting on marketing and brand strategy to consumer brands. Together with a number of partners, we've created a omni-channel sales and marketing approach for consumer brands also looking to come to Europe, and are now expanding that in terms of brands looking to go to India as well. So that's all of us here, and now thank you for that. I would go into a short visual introduction as to who we are at the GIIC. This is the first of our web series that we're hopefully going to continue every month or two with different topics. So there'll be a number of people watching today who are coming in contact with us for the first time. So I'll share just a little bit of information about us, our programs, we are a members-based organization here in Germany and also in India, roughly what it means to be a member of the GIIC, what the benefits of that are, and what our plan is for this year and for the years in front of us. So I'll just quickly share this. Okie dokie. Oh, actually, I'm sharing the wrong one. Apologies. Whoops, I'm showing the brief here. See, everybody's having technical difficulties this morning. And now my share is not showing. Here we go. There we go. All right, what would this be without a technical hitch or two, hey? All right, so the GIIC was founded around about 3 years ago as a members-based organization. We work on both sides of the equation for promoting the bilateral interests of German and European businesses looking to head to India and for Indian businesses looking to come to Europe. We have a little more information there, of course. We have a number of different verticals which we're focusing on in particular for this year. And our grand vision is that this very important relationship between Germany and India can be one that is in fact stabilizing for the rest of the world. We see really important things like the FTA. The FTA is not simply a trade agreement. It is a bringing together of two very large democratic groups to create the largest democratic alliance in the world. And that's extraordinarily important in these days where things are feeling less certain on some geopolitical fronts. Old alliances are being re-looked at, and everybody's looking at how to strengthen global ties. So that's our grand mission. Keep sliding here. We have taken a very close look at the prognosis and the projections for the next 10 years of what this free trade agreement can mean between India and Europe. And at the moment, we have anywhere between trade of somewhere between 120 to 135 billion euros a year. In 10 years, the prognosis for that is around about a 3x of that trade. We counter that proposal and believe that there is a lot more potential in the relationship between the two, rather than looking at the free trade agreements, very important in terms of increasing the ways in which we do trade with one another, but that as two regions which are historically known for building and for creating, that if we look at this relationship closely enough, if we look at leveraging each other's strengths and for this being a true partnership between Europe and India, that a 10x of that 3x is possible. So we refer to this as the 3 trillion euro opportunity. We see this as our North Star in terms of the dialogue that we plan for the next years and for helping to supercharge what will happen over the next 10 years. We are an action-based organization. We're not just talk. So one of the things that we've been doing is, and in particular with starting our grand mission in October last year, we hosted a summit at the Brandenburg Gate and invited 150 leaders from India and 150 leaders from Germany to come together from different segments to get into one room and to effect real change. The event at which we kicked off our grand mission was incredibly productive in many ways, and has set the stage for us for all of the work that we've done in the past. Here at the GIIC, we feel very much like the last 3 years of work was all coming towards this moment on the 6th of October last year where we pressed the go button. Since that moment, we've had, of course, agreement on the terms of the FTA, as it's been coined as the mother of all free trade agreements, has come out since then, and we see it as our mission to further support that goal, and to ensure that we perhaps can play our part, that ratification will be a smooth and easy process, and perhaps hopefully a little bit different to other free trade agreements which have taken quite a while to get approved on the Brussels side. Let's see how that goes this time around. Our key programs that we have a number of various platforms that we've launched. Of course, innovation summits this year. We'll also be hosting 2 summits in India in May, one together with IIM Bangalore, one together with IIT Delhi, both at the end of May. And back here in Berlin on the 29th of September, once again at the Brandenburg Gate, rolling into a full week program with an event at the Munich Town Hall, and following then with another event in Stuttgart at the end of that week. We are very heavily organized in the orchestration of innovation, startups and scouting on both sides of the equation, and I'll go into a little more detail on that a little bit later. None of this would be possible without our committed partners and members. Once again, the GIIC is a members-based organization. We are able to do the work that we've done up until now with the wonderful support and help of our members and partners. If you're interested at some point in learning more about becoming a member, either as an individual or as an organization, please feel free to reach out at any point to one of us from the GIIC, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about joining the GIIC family. So just a little more information on us all there. And at this point, I would stop talking and hand over to, as Caroline called it, this illustrious panel. I felt quite humbled to be called illustrious, and would hand over to the members of the panel to an open discourse on your perspective of the FTA, those things that are important, and would hand over first of all to Caroline.
Thanks, Luke. I should, of course, preface my remarks by saying where I'm working now, before I get in trouble with my new employer. I'm a senior advisor now at Berlin Global Advisors, which is a wonderful collection of people with an unbelievable amount of international experience, which made me think of it too in your opening remarks, Luke. You know, we look back on a long-standing and ever-building relationship with India from the European side. We heard this phrase, "India is coming," many years. I don't know how many events at the embassy I was engaged in, or the sort of the precursor of the GIIC was bottom-down initiative by the 2 German and Indian governments on tech cooperation that never really took off as it should have done. So I'm hoping that now with the GIIC, we kind of have, instead of a top-down, bottom-up, business-driven technology, really push forward. I say that because I don't know if this is the mother of all deals. I was looking back a little bit in my old notes, the Australian, Japanese, also Mercosur. There's certainly some things that are new and very interesting about the FTA with India, the CBAM compliance, strategic aspect of it. It's always positioned in a really different geopolitical era that we're in, this China +1 migration and mobility aspects, and probably most significantly, what it means for the services sector. I think that's even more interesting than maybe the tariffs. But for business, whether they're big or small, the impact is, of course, different if you're an SME than if you're a corporate, if you've been in one of the other markets for a long time. But for both, it's about a framework that now will hopefully see more stability, more coherence, and a more commitment on both sides on both sides of the markets. Many years from the tech side, we only had tax concerns, patent concerns, always problems, and now you've seen that shifting. For SAP, the largest development center is now in Bangalore globally. There's been an enormous shift. So I'm hoping that this FTA will take us to the next level. But of course, it still requires for businesses to be ready, to be prepared, to have their strategies in focus, to have their partners on the ground, and it requires that capability and that commitment in order to take off. That would be my short intro into the topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Lavnish, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Caroline. Very interesting thoughts there and some background on that. Duke, if you would be kind enough to sort of put up the slides. What I'm going to do is, a little bit of introduction through slides. I thought it'll be better structured. I'm going to do is a little bit of high-level view on how India is evolving and what that really means for businesses, European businesses coming to India or looking at India as an opportunity. Things are changing. We all know India is big, massive, growing, one of the fastest growing large economies in the world. And there are some structural changes, and I'd like to talk through some of those points here. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, for many years, India has been large, but now it is 4 trillion, right? And I think this 5th largest is now moved up a little bit more, one number more to 4th, and on track to be the 3rd largest this decade, right? I think India is also one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing major market in the world, growing at about 7%. And if you look at the top 5% population, that itself is 17 million premium consumers in the market who are traveled, well exposed, have the disposable income, and are looking for luxury products, spend, So that's a very different India from actually what previously people perceive, right? Whole 300 million plus middle class customers, potential customers, consumers who are upwardly mobile. This is the expanding middle class that is now part of the corporate workforce, part of the workforce in general, earning well. The quality of life is increasing, and also as a result of which they spend more, right? So as a result of which India's growth is increasingly consumption driven, right? There's a huge amount of consumption. It's a huge, massive consumption market. And that's also the other big lever around that is the whole digital first commerce ecosystem. And I think that's a very interesting sort of play that has come in recently in the last 5 to 7 years. Let's, Luke, if you could just move to the next one. Yeah. Some other things that are changing: rapid urbanizations. There's more and more population coming into the cities. Of course, it's chaotic, but it's also large, dense, urban consumer centers, right? And rising disposable income, expansion of the upper middle class. Like I said, the 70 million consumers is probably more than a lot of European countries, right? So I think just as a market, as just one market, is very, very large. What that does is allows you to come into the market, come into the country with high margin premium products, right? And this whole this whole reduced tariff will further sort of boost this more. Can we go to the next slide?
Of course.
Yeah. India plus one, like we say, like we like to call it, India plus one is not tactical anymore. It's actually structural, right? So there's a whole bunch of government push behind this. There are a lot of PLIs, production linked incentive schemes, for people to look up. The whole manufacturing ecosystem is getting upgraded, so that Make in India as an initiative has actually built that entire infrastructure. There's a whole lot of investment in infrastructure. So roads, ports, logistics, all of this is actually giving a big boost to the Indian economy. So we go forward. This is a big one. I think India is now leading in what we call digital public infra. That's a unique advantage. We now have a unified tax system, GST. We have a real-time payment system, UPI. In fact, UPI is now being taken to other countries. It's a population, like we say, it's a population scale digital rail, like at that level. There's a whole digital identity framework, which is Aadhaar, and then the Open Network Digital Commerce (ONDC), which is actually rapid, which is enabling the whole rapid digital adoption. Now, what does all of this mean? What this means is that there is a much more emphasis on transparency. It reduces your transaction cost. It reduces that entire informality to the whole market, and it brings the whole down of operational friction down. Move to the next slide, please. But at the same time, while there's this big digital push that's trying to take away all the friction, it's still a challenge. It's India is not frictionless. Challenges remain. It's a huge country with each state having its own regulatory variation, navigating complexity, and execution variability is very complex in different parts of the world, in different segments of society, in different industry. It's very varied. This risk is now being increasingly managed through all the digital structure that's coming through, and I think that's making things far more easier. And more and more international companies, European companies that come into India, the recommendation to them is always to start with a controlled exposure. Think very long term, but start doing trials and pilots. If you can move to the next slide, please. So how do you get ready? And just to sum it all, and I want to do death by PPT, but I think the last slide, I think the typical consultant way to sort of end it is basically, look, I think getting ready for the opportunity, start with a controlled small pilot. Maybe it's a market research, maybe it's a limited number of products that you want to trial in some city. The e-commerce market is mature, platforms are available that allows for a digital, in general, a low cost digital go to market to try something out in the market, right? The opportunity, but when you do that, always think of building a small presence, establish a small presence in the city, in the country, with a very local sort of lean team, right? I think what that does is you need to engage with the local ecosystem, try and understand how the country is working, what are the cultural nuances, what different how different parts of the ecosystem sort of collaborate together. And as you start understanding the consumer behavior, you gradually, at the end of the day, digital, actually the whole market is now flipped to say digital is the entry point, but you eventually need to go omni-channel. You eventually need to go into the formal retail channel, and have that whole phygital play. That's what succeeds in India. And I think finally, I would say that India is also a market which you have to adopt to. So when you do a small pilot, have a local presence, look at partnerships, you need to adapt to the market. What that really means is think about customized products that are built for the Indian population, right? Built for the Indian ecosystem. And therefore also customized pricing, again, built for this market. And I've seen across my career, when I've dealt with various have come to India, the lift and shift does not work. You cannot take you cannot take something that has worked in your country, in a different part of the world, and just bring it here as such and sort of try and push it through the market. That more often than not, people fall flat on their face. I think the willingness to sort of try something out, learn from the experiment and adapt. Recent example, and I think I can talk about this, is it's an interesting one, is in the papers. Actually, it was in the newspapers and medias, right? I think Starbucks also has had a certain format that they had in mind when they came to India, and they said that, so much square footage, this kind of product, this pricing, etc. But I think after several years have actually come back and now learned that India has to work in a slightly different way and are trying to do it slightly differently. Maybe smaller spaces, maybe more flexible menu, maybe more customized Indian menu. And that's a very interesting side example to say how people come in with a certain point of view, but over a period of time have to adopt. And those are the people who actually succeed. So you have to come in with that open mindset. I'll stop here, I think, and look for thoughts from other sort of panelists. Yeah.
Lavnish, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I have a funny feeling that the 100 questions and topics that I would like to talk about now after Caroline and Lavnish is going to be 200 or 300 times that once Jörn has given his perspective. So thank you both very much. And we'll hand over now to Jörn.
Thank you, Luke. First of all, I just want to let you know that originally our CEO, Dr. Diana Taubert, was thought to hold this webinar and host the IP section, but due to a very urgent import issue, she had to take legal measures right away in the morning. So I am now here to do the talking. Of course, out of our preparatory meetings, I'm still familiar with all this and will shed really specific light on the IP situation. And since Diana is not here today, this shows how important IP can be and how quickly it can become important. And that's why we as patent attorneys highly welcome that IP is a codified explicit part of the FTA. And if you read the FTA, they do not construe it only as a form of exclusive right to have a patent, to have a design. No, they see it as operational tool to secure technology transfer, for instance. And as Lavnish and Caroline already told, and Luke, you as well, what we all have to see is that we are having a market of about 2 billion people with EU and India. They share around 1/4 of global GDP. So the more liberate now the markets become, with cuts of almost 90% in tariffs on both sides, this immediately bolsters the market exchange in terms of product launches, local distribution partners, know-how transfers, but also the risk of imitation, the risk of copying. And we get a very complex landscape, and especially an complex IP landscape. And Lavnish, you are right, of course, we cannot neglect the digital and AI age. And there, the most important key message I want to place here is have IP awareness and have it proactively early on. If FTA starts into operative force in about 1 year, this year can be well used proactively to do your IP homework. Which rights do I have? Do I have EPO rights or not? Shall I file them within this year to get it effective more quickly? So these things shall already been done. And this is our call to action. Think of IP, think of what you have, what you do, what you miss, make a gap analysis, and then approach proactively. Because in a nutshell, and we can discuss it, of course, I will now just stop with a nutshell. Trade opens markets. This is the FTA, and IP protects margins. And only with secured IP, technology transfer will take place and will bolster innovations, not only ideas, but true innovations. Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled that you three are the ones who were here for our first conversation on the FTA. This is three unique and fantastic perspectives on what is at its core intended to be a simple maneuver to get everything moving faster, but in reality is multi-layered, it is complex, it is going to require a lot of patience as we walk towards ratification. And of course affects many different industries in completely different ways, and all various stages of processes. So thank you all very much. I would use this now as a segue to walk through a couple of things that we prepared in terms of the FTA, a couple of numbers, a couple of different scenarios, what it means for various different segments, what the real impact is, what the real impact is not, and go through a couple of different examples now, and then head off into some open discussion topics. So I'm just going to go back to my magic deck here, which wants to stay with Lavnish's slides, which I would totally understand. Apologies, this is just not doing what I want it to do. Right, so here we go. Okie dokie. Can you see my screen? Perfect. Lovely. So coming back to a couple of those headline numbers that we were talking about before, between the EU and India, we are talking about 24% of the world's population. And that 24% is democratic, creating the world's largest democratic alliance. It will also be the world's largest FTA. So the ambition is enormous. The road to get us here was long and arduous. I guess the question for all of us now is how long it takes for ratification. I have a question for you all at the end later, which is connected to a bottle of bubbles or champagne as to who gets closest. But we'll get to that point in a moment. But my hope for all of this, of course, is that it's not going to take as long as, for example, the EU-Mercosur FTA, which has taken an extraordinarily long time to be ratified. We need to move faster and be more efficient, and that is on many structural levels the context and the goal of the EU-India FTA. Let's just hope that actually goes in the doing. I guess getting away from the primary bullet points as to what it all means, we all know it's big, we all know that it's very important, is the very impressive numbers in terms of what it actually means and what tariffs are being reduced. On the EU side, around 90% of tariff lines are being eliminated. When you add to that additional trade liberalization processes, that equates to around about 99.3% of tariffs being removed. And on the India side, that number is 86 and about 96.6. So you see that there is enormous desire on both sides to ensure that this thing is as productive as possible. And to be philosophical on this for a second, there is enormous advantages from both sides of the equation. India moves fast. It has bulk and muscle. Europe has manufacturing history, knowledge, and those two things that when brought together can create a truly unique partnership. So, going into a little more on the individual segments, where these reductions in tariffs will be of most effect. EU exports to India, vehicles, currently 60 to 100% on a phased reduction. Automobile parts also reduced after a transition period. Important for the Mittelstand, in particular in Germany. The German economy runs on the back of the Mittelstand. Is manufacturing. So industrial machinery will be likely reduced to to virtually zero. Chemicals, specialty chemicals as well, medical devices, and also in one of the more impressive parts of this, of course, is beverages, where we have 120% reduction in tariffs on wine, spirits, and beers. Wine effectively for being reduced down to zero. Conversations that we've had recently with large wine manufacturers in Europe who have attempted to enter the Indian market at various points have failed because the landed unit price of a bottle of European wine is not in relation to purchasing parity on the other end. So that means European wines will become a lot more competitive. Also, olive oil, processed foods, such as confectionery, breads, pasta, pastries, chocolates, pet food, olive oil, all of that being reduced effectively to zero. Some of those segments are high growth segments in India, and there is an increased desire for European products in the Indian market for the Indian consumers. So that'll be a massive advantage. We wanted to provide you with a couple of examples. The current situation for the export of industrial machinery to India. If we look at, for example, a German Mittelstand company, engineering firm exporting around about 40 million annually to India, has a tariff exposure of around about 4 million euros per year. The customs processing is laborious, and there is an inequality between the relationship to other Asian countries and the EU. So post FTA, be gradually reduced down to zero. That means an annual savings of around about 4 million euros per year. We all have lots of ideas what we can do with an additional 4 million euros per year. I can imagine. I would have a few if anybody would like my ideas. But of course, that increased margin can be invested into new programs. If we move on then to another quick example, more on a consumer front. Again, when we look at what the FTA is and what it is not, the purchasing price for a luxury German car in India at the moment is very high. What the FTA does not mean is that German luxury cars will now be cheap. It does mean that the landed price and purchasing price for a luxury German car will be more affordable, however. So at the moment, there's an import duty of 60 to 100% on a premium German car, also from the German perspective, where the car industry is extraordinarily valued in this country, and all of the component parts that go with it as well. So this gives more access to the market in India. It will be quota-based. It will not be an open market, but step by step. On the Indian side, Indian exports to the EU, of course, probably one of the top of those. The most important is IT and services. It's not tariff-driven, but part of the market liberalization programs will be vastly improved market access. Mobility will be increased, making movement between the two much easier. And as we look towards expansion in AI industries, India is leading the way, as we saw with the Impact AI Summit just a couple of weeks ago in Delhi, setting the tone globally for the development of AI, and that those innovations make their way to Europe a lot easier and at the front of the list. Pharmaceuticals, of course, and textiles and apparels. A couple of quick examples. One would be an Indian textile, very important industry for is the textile industries in the EU. Current situation, EU tariffs are around about 12% for a mid-sized or large apparel exporter with around about 25 million euros of revenue per year. Their exposure will be reduced by anywhere up to around 3 million per year. So tariff elimination, immediate cost competitiveness, which makes purchasing prices on this end more appealing, and able to scale a lot better inside of the EU. It's one of the things that we talk a lot about, just as a small segue, is that Germany is a natural entry point to the EU. The EU is a large market, also complex market with many opportunities. But for non-EU European companies, there needs to be an entry point. We believe structurally, geographically, that it makes sense for Germany to be that entry point to the EU. And that's one of the things that will become a lot easier with the reduction in tariffs. The next, of course, is Indian food exporters to the EU. Tariffs currently at 5 to 20%. Important to note, of course, at this point on both sides that customer protection, ingredient protection, supply chain declaration, all of those things which are very important on both sides of the equation, particularly when it comes to consumer products, stays exactly the way that they are. There will be no change to those regulations in Europe or in India. When we export consumables on both sides, those regulations stay 100% the same. So same obligations, same duty of care to consumers to ensure that the quality of food is there, that there are no the sustainability targets are met. All of those things are at eye level on both sides of the equation. Okie dokie, so that is the end of our small technical issue here. This other computer has frozen. Miraj, would you be so kind? Sorry, our technical guy, producer, director in the background here who's making it all work, without whom nothing would happen. Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, I'd say let's just jump into some discussions. I think we've done all of our introductions. We've got a little time in front of us to come up with some hypotheticals, to bring an open chat, and I would start off perhaps with a question to Caroline. Around the angle of who really does win. Are we talking about sectoral shifts, competitive repositioning? And my question for you would be, from a structural competitiveness perspective, which sectors do you think will truly gain? Which will face new pressure? And I guess to a certain extent then for all of us as a follow-up, how can companies position themselves in advance of that additional pressure?
Thanks, Luke, especially and I will say this right now because I have a bit of a time pressure and we'll have to jump off at 11:30. So I appreciate the chance to jump back on and comment on a few things that the other panelists mentioned. Maybe starting with just a quick addition to Lavnish's great expose on what people should be doing and companies should be doing. One of the things we've also seen, or I've seen quite a lot in the past, is reliance on a JV partner. So be engaged locally, understand the market, take the long-term vision, and don't just rely on that on the joint venture partners working out all your problems for you on the ground. That doesn't work either. Sectors that are benefiting. Thank you for Luke. You went through where the advantages are. I would still say, and that's not just coming from the IT sector, I think the digital services is going to be the real win. And what's going to be the big win is the co-innovation opportunities. So now if we finally work towards standards harmonization, regulatory, good governance, IP alignment, protection that actually really works, the advantages, which you've just mentioned, the AI Impact Summit, what India and the global stuff all will be really good at will be facilitating broader adoption of accessible AI innovation. And what the Europeans hopefully will still be good at will be the upscaling of the engineered, business applied AI. And those two sides being able to learn from each other and leap forward on AI adoption, that's, I think, something that we will really see significant impact. And around all of that, I mean, come a long way from recognizing e-commerce, e-signatures on e-commerce. These digital chapters that have gone into the last FTAs are really deep and cut right to the core of the issues. Yes, there are still some differences around the India Data Protection Act versus GDPR. There will be, of course, things to work out, but it's still an enormous leap forward, and probably the most, well, maybe CETA is the most comprehensive, but certainly right up there with an OECD level FTA on that sense. So I think the digital, and I think the other thing that's very cool that maybe is a little scary for some of the Indian businesses is the CBAM compliance. So now businesses on the Indian side, if they want to cooperate, whatever, they're not being excused from these cross-border charges, fees, but they will get support. They get the SMEs get point of contact to learn about or how to comply, and if they can make that leap, that's an enormous opportunity, not just for India, not just for Europe, but for all of us on the climate front, the sustainability front. So I think that's really also a new and interesting development in this particular FTA. Still 30% of the population, Loveness, not connected to the internet, right?
Yes.
More or less. That's a little minor detail, but we're talking such huge numbers, I suppose, in the overall image of things. It doesn't much matter. And of course, there's enormous investment. Oh, and we didn't talk about FDI, sorry, and then I'll shut up. We didn't talk about FDI. That's really not moving much on either side. And that's a challenge. Maybe some of you have more insight into that than I do. That I'm not an investment specialist, but I do work. I work with people who are on my other little hat in the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. I'm with them in town today. That's why I have to jump out early. That's something that's everyone's keen to position. There'll be a big investment conference that Germany's doing this year, like Choose France. Yeah, so finally everyone's getting on the bandwagon to do more investment promotion, bilateral with the various European partners. That's a big issue and not really resolved, obviously, by an FTA. Thanks.
Oh, that's great. That's thank you, Caroline. I mean, in particular, when we look at and I'm probably going to get the name wrong, the new German regulations here about delivery chain acknowledgement and declaring where the delivery chain comes from is going to be a really important part of this process too. But Jörn, I was thinking about you, and Caroline was talking too in particular around Indian AI companies when they're coming to Europe. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Thank you, Caroline. The digital topic, of course, is of utmost importance. And I can give you a good example what also needs to be considered when talking about digital inventions and regulations, which are maybe regionally specific or even nationally specific. Because in terms of AI, what also must be absolutely understood, please, is that IP, irrespective of the FTA, stays territorial. Being it copyrights, designs, trademarks, patents, these are territorial rights, while the FTA wants to have no big imbalance between the IP systems. They want to have high standards. They want to have it really lived in a vivid way. There will be differences, especially in enforcement. You cannot copy an enforcement strategy from Europe towards India and vice versa. And for instance, to your question, Luke, when an IP company is coming to the European market, there are constellations where the source code of certain AI tools or software tools must be laid open. And there is still a myth, we might talk about mythbusters, that software is not patentable, still with developers. That's why they are saying we are still working in the open domain. I can't protect anything either, so I can share source code or whatsoever. This is not true. Software as such, as the program code, is not patentable because it is copyright protected, for instance, in the EU. But the higher order level, the algorithms, the technical effects resulting from software implemented invention, they can well be patented if they suit to the requirements. And this means before you have to comply with a regulation opening up your source code, have it protected in advance on algorithm level, on technical output or use level with patents, for instance. right? And then adjust to the needs of India as well as to Europe. And keep in mind, the EU-India FTA does not mean EU always as a whole. There are still different nations, Spain, France, Europe, with specific regulations either. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, look, Jan, this is a great point, and it's one that, I mean, separately to this conversation, Lavnish and I have had this conversation a number of times too, is that the demystifying processes between India and Europe. There is a misconception that India is one market. It is not. It is many markets and many languages. And the same in terms of Europe. Europe is one region with multiple countries and languages and a whole multitude of different markets as well. And we have that complexity here, of course, in that the baseline, and I've heard this on many occasions too, as a misconception from the Indian side, that once I jump through the regulations in Brussels of a Brussels standard, that I've jumped through everybody's regulations, and that is not the case. There needs to be more of an awareness on the other end that Brussels is the baseline standard. It is the for want of a better phrase, the lowest common denominator. And that over and above that, individual member nations have got their own regulations. You know, I mean, we've been a great example is the export of Ayurvedic products from India into Europe at the moment. There are baseline standards as to what can be used where and under what conditions, but Shilajit is not legal into European countries. So there is a lot of misconceptions in terms of what that lowest common denominator is, and that's all part of this. I mean, we see that very much as our responsibility on the bridge too, is to demystify this process, because it's almost like there's a filter in both directions as we get closer and get to know each other more, and that'll be certainly part of the process. Very nice. I wish we had more time. I think we've only got a few minutes left, so I might pop on to maybe two more quick questions for you all. I think the number one for me is more of a theoretical, philosophical question, and I guess I would love to have perhaps a 60-second answer from each of you. As Caroline mentioned before, we've been here before. We've had this discussion before. We've had this in both directions. You know, Europe as an opportunity for Indian companies, India as an opportunity for European companies. And so my question is this the India growth thesis? Is it hype? Is it a structural shift, or is it real? Are we really there? Jan?
I would say it is not hyped. Maybe in the news, you know, the headlines, they overhype it a bit, but the truth stays. India is quickly emerging, and I can second this from patent filing numbers. There were years already where they superseded China and so on. And as we all know, times are getting so fast, times are getting so complex. This is all now even bolstered through AI developments. It won't stop. It will absolutely emerge.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lavnish?
Yeah, I mean, also wanted to pick up, I think I wanted to pick up specifically on the AI piece. I think the way we see, India is of course a huge market, and I shared some of the numbers earlier, right? The numbers are there, the growth is there. It's not hype. I think we can see it. The consumption is increasing. Some of the new industries like quick commerce, e-commerce has become quick commerce in India, basically, right? And so the Indian consumer is very discernible. Like they want to, they can spend the money. They want their products faster. They want everything, right? I think we're seeing a lot of that happening. But what is also interesting is now in the world of AI, I see a lot of businesses coming up, whether small, medium, large, every type of business is waking up, and it's a CEO agenda or the promoter or the founder agenda to see how I can actually get AI into my business. Now, what that does is very interesting. What it does is, like Caroline mentioned earlier, the co-innovation opportunity, right? So if there's an AI company out of Europe that is building a really good new technology, infrastructure, product, technology, actually has a massive market, a lot of small businesses in India who are actually willing to sort of try something out, co-build together, launch a product for that business, for that sort of industry. So that allows you to co-build something here, and the businesses also have the benefit of having so much of data. You pick any sort of industry, whether it's healthcare or agriculture or just general consumer products, right? The data is all there, the trends and consumption patterns are all there. So it's a beautiful market to try something out, to co-create and build something new. uh, and I think we are increasingly seeing that happen now. So that innovation ecosystem that we had earlier is now in super or turbocharged with AI. So what can we do with AI to? So we typically do a lot of innovation workshops, etc., with small, medium, large enterprises, and now a very strong element of every innovation process is AI, and thoughts and things that could be done in matter of months is now done in days, right? And every person, every working individual is upskilling their AI knowledge, so that whatever they could do in weeks and months, they are also able to do. So unless we and I'll give you a very small anecdotal example. If there are no meetings which are not smart meetings. So a smart meeting means that what have you used, what AI have you used to come into this meeting? So this analysis, is it AI proof? Is it already AI ready? So the baseline is different, right? So we've already reached here. Now let's talk beyond that. So clients talk like that, internal meetings happen like that. So I think the general level of adoption on that is very high.
Very much so. Thanks, Avnish. That's great. Caroline, what do you think?
Just one last line for me, and then I will have to jump. I'm sorry, but you've covered all the bases, and let's not forget this is embedded in a new geopolitics. So we have Indian access with the strategic and defense fund. That's 160 billion. I was just looking at my notes again. Then we have the mobility and the migration framework. We have the investment protection agreement. So it's not just an FTA. It's really a framework for shared growth in a new geopolitical situation. So I think it's here to stay.
Oh, Caroline, that is the most wonderful sentence to wrap our discussion up with. Thank you very much. That's absolutely perfect.
Thanks. My apologies. I will jump off the screen and leave you with a little black gap in the upper right-hand corner. I'm sorry about that. But it was wonderful to exchange with you. I hope we can keep the conversation going offline as well.
Thank you very much for your time. Guys, thank you for this first summit. Really appreciate you being there. I had one quick question for the three of you. Caroline had to run. Maybe you'll quickly answer this one question for me. And there's a bottle of champagne at the end of this for the person who gets it closest when we finally get there. Tips: how long will ratification take?
I would say sometimes things are slower than you want to have it expected. 1 year for at least appears considerable, but maybe even not much longer, because a year is a long time. As we talk, times are running faster. So what I think, at least prepare with a frame of 1 year is not a false measure now.
Okay, so your tip is 1 year?
From now on, exactly 1 year. About
we're recording this
for ratification from the Indian side.
No, I mean, who knows?
Champagne at the end of this.
I'll give a typical consultant answer: in the range of 1 to 2 years.
I love it. That's wonderful.
But I think whether it's 1 year or 1.5 years, I think time is still short, because it's not a lot of time. I think I had put a slide together to say that all the things that you could do to set yourself up. And I think all of that takes time. And if you've already made that decision to make that investment, to have a long-term view on India, it's not a market on the periphery anymore. It's one of the core drive growth sort of pillars of the world. And you sort of, if you take that bet that you want to be there, I think 1 year is too short. It's coming, and I think you need to act now, right? So with that, I'd like to sort of sign off and leave that
means
part.
champagne for all of us. Guys, thank you very, very much on behalf of everybody here at the GISA. Thank you for participating, and I wish you in India a lovely afternoon, and for those watching in Europe, good morning. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.